Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build a truck. In particular, this Fiat 621 Samochod Cizarowy. Surprise surprise, I've still not learned Polish. Anyway, this is a 72nd scale kit from First to Fight, and it's intended for their wargame Redbank 1939. The back of the box is pretty much what I've come to expect from a First to Fight kit. A basic painting guide, and I think this camo scheme is rather nice. There's also some information in Polish, German and English, as well as the instructions. These aren't the most comprehensive instructions, but they will do the job. This isn't the most complicated build, so in this case, this is enough, though they may be a little bit small for some people's eyesight. Fortunately, you can find the instructions online, and I've included a link in the description. It is the same diagram, but it's clearer than the version on the box, and you can zoom in. How convenient. Inside the box, we find two sprues moulded in a nice dark green plastic. These are quite neat and pretty well detailed. This kit doesn't have much in the way of the very fine, thin, easily broken parts that I often complain about with First to Fight kits, but there are still a couple of bits and pieces that you might like to be careful with. The moulding is quite nice. You'll have to do a little bit of cleanup of course, because mould lines are always there. Lurking. Waiting. Mould lining. But you won't have too much trouble cleaning them up. They're not as scary as they think they are. One thing I do think they could have done a little bit better is the canvas cover for the truck's rear. It's a bit flat and not very interesting. That is a very minor complaint, and I have seen worse. Overall, I think the detail is really nice, especially when you consider that this kit is quite cheap and intended as a gaming piece. Very nice. As always, there is a magazine included, and, as always, I'll remind everyone that I don't know Polish.
Yeah, you made that obvious earlier.
There's pictures and a larger version of the painting guide, but unless I've gone blind, there's no instructions. The last bunch of these I've seen had the instructions inside the magazine, so I guess that's probably something they started later. This is a fairly early edition, number 11. Still, not a bad thing to get, even if you don't speak Polish. This kit doesn't include any decals, but you probably don't really need any. So, let's get to the part where I glue the bits of plastic together. I start with the frame, which seems as good a place as any, and the first thing I did was install the spare wheel. It's in a little brackety thing, and it goes here on the underside near the rear mounting for the leaf springs. There's a couple of indents on the sides of the frame for this to mount into. It's pretty simple. Then, I add the rear axle, and it's fairly obvious how this should go on. There's keying on the leaf springs, and it seems like the middle part is meant to connect to the drive shaft. It makes sense, though it didn't quite go together. I'm not sure that's super important, and it will mostly be hidden later on, so while I did try to press it together a bit, I didn't worry about it too much. The front axle comes next. This comes as a single part, with both of the leaf springs built in, and you probably won't be surprised when I say that this is one of the more delicate parts in the kit, so I would suggest being gentle with it. The way it goes into place wasn't immediately obvious to me. My brain just kind of wanted to place it back a bit further than it should be, but I got there in the end. Next, wheels, and I was a little bit concerned about the front axle. You can see how it's nice and thin and very breakable, and you can also see that there isn't anything behind the wheel holdy bit, so if you apply too much force in toward the frame, that will break. Fortunately, the wheels in this kit fit loosely enough that they just slide on without more than a tiny bit of pressure. However, if you are worried, it's easy enough to just put something behind the wheel hub bit, like a knife or your finger if you can get it in there, just to give it the support it needs while you press against it. The rear wheels are in sets of 2, and it's pretty easy to glue those together. The wheels go onto the axles like they do on the front, only this time they're on the rear, and we don't have to worry about the axle breaking when we press on it. Probably. Next, I add the gear stick. This is pretty simple. There's a fairly deep mounting hole for it, so there's very little chance of making a mistake here. Then, the steering wheel. There isn't really a mounting hole for this, which is a bit annoying. You just kind of glue it onto the dashboard and hope that it won't be knocked out of place when you install the cab. I follow that with these side parts, with the mudguards and footboard things. There's one of these for each side, obviously, and there is some keying for them, but it doesn't really lock them into place or anything like that, so it is a little bit fiddly to get them into place, but nothing too bad. You can glue them to the cab later on, so I wouldn't worry too much. Next, a box, which is probably for snacks. This box goes here on the left side, and there's a sizable block for it to key onto. Very simple. About all you have to worry about here is that you've got the box on the right way up, which I've probably done. It's probably safe to say that this truck was never designed to be driven standing up. So, we'll add a seat. It's pretty easy to install, just don't try to put it in upside down and you'll probably be fine. Next, I take the cab and add the roof. I did notice that the little frame bit, I guess you would call it, in the middle of the two windshield panes doesn't quite reach all the way to the roof, so it does look a bit odd if you look at it from a low angle. I'm sure this will cause the rivet counters to have skin failure, but really, it's fine if you're looking at it from most angles. Also, the roof goes on nice and easy. Might as well install the cab now, and I did do a bit of test fitting first, just to be sure that it wasn't going to knock the steering wheel out of place, and it did interfere with it a little bit, but nothing too severe. With the cab in place, I add glue to the various contact points, and because this is extra thin cement, it'll seep into any gaps and joints and bond everything nicely. I also added glue where the footboards on the side will contact the cab and push those parts up into place. A little bit of gentle holding to make sure no unwanted gaps appear, and we've got ourselves a cab. Headlamps come next, and these are mounted to a bar that simply sits between the two little indents on the front mudguards, which is quite simple, though clearly I've got something not quite straight, so they're a little bit lopsided, and I know that's a huge crime. Call the cops, I don't care. In order to carry cargo, probably very important snacks for the front line, we need a rear tray thingo. Cargo box? Whatever you choose to call it, it's a fairly simple assembly. There's a floor, which I would imagine is pretty good for stopping cargo from falling onto the ground. You glue the four sides onto it, obviously making sure that you're putting the sides into the correct positions, and the instructions will help with this, at least a little bit. I wasn't totally sure if I was putting the end parts in the right place. One of them has what seemed to be footholes or something like that, and it wasn't clear if that should go to the front or rear, but I put it on the rear because it just made the most sense really. The canvas cover comes next, and this sort of sits on top of the side parts, rather than fitting over or inside of it, which would function as keying. This means it needs to be eyeballed, by which I don't mean position it with your eyeball because that would hurt and cause damage. What I mean is you've got to use your eyeballs to look and check that it's aligned on all sides, which means you may have to do some nudging to get the fit right. It's pretty simple really. The final step is to connect the cargo compartment to the frame. There are little notches in the frame for the ribby things on the bottom of the cargo tray, and that should make positioning this quite easy, but it was a bit more fiddly than I would have expected. Eventually I got it into the right place, added glue, and gently held it, reassuring it that everything was going to be okay. And it was. So that's the Fiat 621 truck in 72nd scale, from first to fight, completed. It was a nice, quick, simple build, the results of which I'm quite pleased with. I'm also rather pleased that I didn't break any of the parts. I didn't actually break anything in the previous First to Fight kit build either, but I have broken enough parts in these particular kits that it's something I always think about when I build them. That's not to say I think they're bad kits, not at all. I think they're really good. They're inexpensive, very nicely detailed, particularly for something intended for wargaming use, and they've got a lot of interesting vehicles to choose from, which means for the foreseeable future, you'll keep seeing them on this channel. I don't know anything about Fiat trucks or trucks in general really, so I can't tell you how accurate this model is, and I doubt anybody comes here for that kind of information, but it does look really nice, and it does seem accurate enough to me. I rather enjoyed this build. It was nice, quick and easy, which, when choosing what kit to build that day, was exactly what I wanted. I think I might have done enough waffling for now, so if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you want to share, why not drop by our friendly Discord community and show us some pictures? We would love to see what you've done. If you want to watch me build kits like this one live on stream, why not check out my Twitch channel? That is where I happen to do live streaming. The link is in the description below. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe here on YouTube? It's free and it makes you really attractive to whoever you might be interested in.
Is that true, Herbert?
Well, no, but do it anyway. Also, if you have the means and you want to help a Herbert Erpaderp do Herbert Erpaderp things, as well as see my videos a bit early before there's any ads, consider becoming a patron. You can find links to Patreon and all of my other things like Discord and social media in the description below. And as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have a nice day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.